Michael Andrews returned to London in 1992 after 15 years spent in Norfolk. And he travelled to and from his home and studio across the Albert Bridge that spanned the Thames. His imagination was seized by the river and seeing it changing on a daily basis. And also he was interested in its reoccurrence in the literature of Charles Dickens, the paintings of Turner. And he decided that he wanted to paint a series based on the Thames, including the source of the Thames at low tide, and this was the third painting in the initial series, which looks at the estuary of the Thames. And he started in September 1994, and he worked initially doing a huge amount of research and sourcing images and visiting the points on the Thames that he wasn't familiar with. For this particular landscape, he travelled with his wife, June, to Canvey Island in Essex and looked out across the estuary and the jetty that you can see pictured here. And while he was there, they noticed June speaks of the old-fashioned, timeless quality that the landscape had. And there was fishermen, people digging for lugworms, and this sort of wonderful sense of timelessness. And they took photographs. Michael Andrews took photographs. We have small sketches detailing the people. The fishermen have made it into the final image. But he also looked at Victorian photographs, and these figures appear in a photograph that appeared in a newspaper to celebrate the opening of a bridge on the Thames. And he worked initially, he spread the canvas is so huge, and he worked on the floor, and he used great washes of paint and pools of turpentine, which he then blew with a hairdryer. So you get this wonderful ebb and flow that appears, and the colours dissolve into one another. And he also used sediment from the estuary. There's sort of little pieces of gravel and shell, and he mixed that in with his oil paint and created this incredible impasto textured areas that gleam. Depending on where you stand, they kind of gleam and sparkle like water, or they appear very dark and bleak. And these figures, as I say, he chose Victorian figures with a nod perhaps to Sickert, but they also add scale. You can see that this figure here was initially intended to be standing in the longboat just at the end of the jetty, but has been sort of repositioned at the end of the jetty here. And then you have the other figure here. And what I love about them is that they're sort of bearing witness to the scene. They're looking out, and so is there a sense of anticipation? Are they looking for something coming towards them, or are they looking at something going away? But where they're positioned at this high viewpoint, you don't really get a horizon. The sea is very cloudy and just dissolves into the sky. They also give that anchoring point for the eye. Andrews would mix his paints on a glass palette, which was actually a glass-topped table positioned at the side of him, and he would mix them with a palette knife, and you can see these wonderful, great curls of thick impastoed oil, which he then mixed and blended and applied. He sometimes used his palette knife for applying paint, but most usually it was with a brush. And this painting is poignant. Andrews was receiving treatment for cancer in June 1994 and actually postponed further treatment to complete his painting. So this was the final painting that he worked on, completing it on April the 1st. The second painting in the series remains unfinished, but this is his finale. He didn't work on another painting again after completing this one. Art historian William Fever wrote about the Thames Painting series in 1998, saying of the Estuary, "Thames Painting the Estuary is a finale. The ground is stained and raddled, mudded and tide-marked. We pass over it, seeing the wetness drain away, seeing the figures which give you the scale, and finding, towards the top, that the light is too strong. The water whitens to brilliance. Look any further and we'll be dazzled."